Hello, everyone. Okay, welcome back as we start our weekly assignment. This one will be, as mentioned, will include plan oblique drawing. We will be working with just the outside of the building, and so what we'll need is some information that will be helpful to refer to. So, as mentioned in the previous preview, we need the floor plan. Just the ground floor is fine. We need the section because there's some information in here that's helpful. And then we'll need both exterior elevations. So that information needs to be handy and, and available to measure and observe. So for purposes of this exercise, we're going to be, again, we're going to be using 11 by 17. It will be oriented in a portrait orientation. The tools we'll need are 45-degree triangle, not the 30-60, but the 45-degree, which is 45 on this side, 45 on this side, 90 here. We'll need this the architectural scale for a 1/4 inch. We're just working in 1/4 inch today. We'll need, usual pencil and eraser type information or items, and then also some drafting dots, etc. So remember, in this demonstration, we will be working on creating a block out or a rough out of the object drawing, and then what you're going to do is then after you have completed it, then you will set it on a title block and make it look terrific as always. So you'll complete that drawing by retracing it on to a final drawing that'll make it much better quality than the rough out. But the rough out is necessary to figure out how things work. Okay, so we've gone through all that. Now let's go ahead and start with some important rules about the plan oblique drawing. That being said, you've already dipped your toe in the water, so to speak, in that in assignment number 3, we had an opportunity to look at little building forms. And I think you'll remember this object as being kind of a prop that we used so that we could see how things were oriented and what those were. So we're going to be repeating the plan oblique drawing that was done there, but obviously using this other information. There's much more detail involved, and so as a result, the concepts will be the same, but the level of detail will increase because the drawings that we've been working with have more information, more detail to consider. So as we start, it's important to understand that everything that we're doing is based upon the floor plan. Now, I'm going to use this drawing, and it is a little easier for the camera to see than my rough out. It's still a little light, and so we're going to use this, and this will be just fine. And so the first thing we need to do is get ourselves oriented correctly. Now, for all intents and purposes, we're calling this the front of the house or the front of the structure, and this the back. So you would be coming to this as the front door. And this will be reinforced in future videos as we look at perspective and so on. But the other thing that I want you to know is that really, this is the interesting stuff in the building. This stuff back here, it's kind of plain Jane. And so the whole idea on preparing these drawings is not to do the simplest execution of the work, but actually to do what shows the most about your design. So the solarium, the porch, the front windows, all those things really have a pretty strong bearing on the content of the design. So we're going to use this as the front. So make sure that you're oriented correctly because it'll make a big difference. All right, next, what we want to do is we want to understand that when we place this on our drawing board, we're going to need to orient at a 45-degree angle. That means that It's not going to be necessarily square to the parallel, and you'll need to use the triangle to get lined up properly between the parallel rule or the t-square and your and the drawing with the triangle holding at a 45 degree angle. So that's the way we're going to align this. Now the other thing is, this drawing is going to grow vertically because we're going to project it up from this plan. And so you need to plan to hold this pretty far down on your drawing sheet because we're going to be projecting lines vertically. If, for example, or if for some reason that it does grow beyond the sheet boundaries, just put another sheet on it, tape it, and finish out the block out. Again, that's why we're working on block outs and rough outs, so that we can know what the difficulties are going to be with the drawing, and then fix them in the final when we're doing that final tracing. Okay, so first rule, all orientation on a plan oblique, at least for this assignment, will be set at a 45 degree angle. That means 45 degrees. Oh, by the way, 45 degrees here. Every horizontal line that represents, when you're thinking three-dimensionally, all horizontal lines will go at a 45 degree this way or a 45 degree that way. Even on the back side, even on the front side. All horizontal lines will project that are 90 degrees to each other will project at 45 degrees. Now we have some funny little lines here, but we're not going to see that on the outside, so it's not going to be important. Almost because this is a highly rectilinear building or object, everything is going to work just fine with a 45 degree projection on those horizontals. Now, the other thing that we need to understand is that all vertical lines all corners and anything that's vertical in your elevations and in your sections that you did will stay vertical. They're not going to shoot off in any weird angle. They're vertical. So that means we can use the triangle and we can project all our lines vertically up. So that being said, those are really the primary rules. Now we're going to run into a few situations like where the roof pitch is, and the roof is going to be an angle that, rather than calculate it, and I think that would be a challenge for all of us, we're going to plot it. So we're going to find endpoints, and like we did in assignment number 3, or when we did our third assignment, we just mapped out where those endpoints were going to be based on measured locations and placement of where that element was going to go. So as a result, we're going to have some points of intersection, and we're going to have some measurable points that we're going to be able to use our scale, refer to our other drawings, and be able to discern where those positions are. And we'll walk through that as the assignment develops. So, things that you also need to understand is that now we're working with dimensional depth. And so that those depths need to be considered. The building isn't a monolithic box. There are some offsets. Some parts pop out, some parts are recessed in, and you need to keep that in mind. For example, when we do windows and doors, they don't sit on the outside of the building. They're inset into the building just a bit. And if you look around your home, you'll see that where the glass line is, doesn't line up with the wall, generally speaking. It's usually set back in several inches. So depending on, the specific construction that you're living in, it's a good idea to kind of take a look at things and start to understand that anytime you can add that information in, you're adding good reference information for the viewer, and it's also helping you, the designer, to understand really what's going on three-dimensionally. So, last thing to think about is that, as mentioned in the lecture, there are basic ways of building these forms. And one way is to start with a general form and either add to it or subtract from it. So we're going to be doing a little of both as we're doing this exercise. And so I want you to think about, how this drawing is being put together, and we'll see it as it rolls out. So having said all that, let's go ahead and get our drawing tape down and get it ready to start. So I'm going to set the drawing right here in hopes that it projects upward properly, and there's a little bit of camera angle work that I have to kind of keep in mind so that I can produce a decent demonstration for you. So I'm just going to tape a couple points here. I don't need to tape all four corners because I'm going to be putting my vellum on top of that. All right, so we are squared up with the parallel at 45 degrees, so everything should be good. We have our tools together. We're going to go ahead and place our vellum on here. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be kind of low. It's going to look like there's a lot of space up above. That's okay. This drawing's going to grow that direction. So please be advised that you need to give yourself just a little bit of space. Also, I'm kind of looking at where my extremes are. I've got a point out here and a point out here, so I'm going to kind of, balance that out just a little bit. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to square up the sheet with the triangle so that it is lined up nicely with the parallel. And I think that'll work out pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and tape those down. So, again, have that other information available because it'll be necessary. And the first things that we're going to do is we're going to check, double check, as I mentioned, our corner is set right, so we're good underneath. Our paper is oriented in a portrait orientation, so that should work out well for us. And I think we're pretty much ready to go. So the very first step here is really pretty simple. We're going to we're going to trace the floor plan, but just the outer lines of the floor. And the reason is none of the inside is really going to be observable from the outside. So we don't need to bother with with all the stuff inside. We just want the main form of the structure. So as a result, I'm just going to go around the main shape of the building here. And I'm going to go on all the way, all sides, all four corners. Let's make sure I get that lined up. Okay. Okay. So, just the outer side, not the inside, just the outer corner. I'm going to leave the solarium off for now. We'll come back to that towards the end. All right. So, it's just the box. All I've done is just traced the outside line of the box. Okay. Now, what we want to do next is establish that this box that we've just made is the finished floor level. So you can write in the corner FF so you remind yourself what level that's occurring at. Now, what we want to do is we want to project up all four corners, this one, this one, this one, and this one, vertically. And I believe we want to go up 13 feet, but I'm going to check it on my exterior elevation just to make sure. And that is correct. So go up. We were, is that right? Yeah, we went up 8 feet and then 9 feet on our cross section. Let's double check that, make sure we got all that information here. Here it is. So we went up from here to the finished floor, and then we went up 4 more feet. So 4 plus 9 is 13. So we're going to go up 13 feet. And we're going to check ourselves here. Now there's a kind of a a pretty quick way to do this, and I'm going to show you in just a sec. Okay, so I'm just going up 13, and I'll come back and erase in just a bit. I'm just going up arbitrarily all over the place here, because if we've done it correct, our alignment we measured this one. All we have to do now is connect them using our projected triangle, and that's going to get us where we need to go on all four corners, and it should come back to the right location here. I'm going to go up just a bit further, and then as we come back to the starting point, yes indeed, there we are. All I did was come off here at a 45, follow it through with each hitting it at a 45, came back to the button. If you're not certain with that, just remeasure all four corners and you'll be fine. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take the tails off that. That represents this block. Now we have to put this piece on, which is the roof. So we have a couple approaches we can take here. We're going to go ahead and start with the idea that the roof, based on a measurement that I'm going to take right now, and you can check your own. I have a measurement that's very, very close to 25 feet on my drawing here. So I'm going to use that 25 feet, and I'm going to extend my box up just a little bit further. So I'm going to go from 0, which is the finished floor. I'm going to go up 25 feet now, another 12 feet. So there's 25 right here. Now, you're going to see that we're going to go off the drawing a little bit here. Don't get too worked up over that. It's not critical. You'll see what happens. I am now creating a large volume for the roof to occur in. And so I'm just going to shoot some lines up again. I'm going to follow the same technique as I used before. I don't know how far this is going to take me. We're going to see. I think I might have lucked out. We might have enough room. So we're going to see. Just a sec. Okay, so because I'm 25 here, I'm just going to project with my triangle all the way around to there. To here. Did he make? Oh, I just made it. Okay. So by starting low, I was able to keep inside the sheet boundaries. Okay. So all I've really done here, just so in case you're trying to figure this out, is that I have my lower mass, which is where the walls are. This volume area that I've just put on here really just represents the area the roof's going to be in, but we're going to skinny that down in just a sec. All right, so we've referenced our roof, we've got our base, we've got our roof volume, and now we're going to put the roof in. So as I mentioned, everything projects up vertically. That's vertical. But the roof is not vertical. It's on an angle. There's slopes that are occurring there. So how do we find those? Well, if you go back and remember what we did in our third assignment, we just found the corners and we projected them up to the top. So we're going to do the same thing here. So using that technical term of the crisscross, we're going to do that same thing. We're going to go from opposite corner. And we're going to do this very light. Remember, we're not trying to, we want this all to erase. So corner to corner. Okay, again, from this corner to this corner, from this corner to this corner. I'm going to draw these in a little bit darker in just a minute, but I wanted to get them mocked out. So where the center point is, where they come together, I'm going to project a line up until it hits this top boundary line, this larger volume we put on the top when we connected all four corners. That represents the ridge line, the top point of the drawing. That represents that point right there. So I'm going to do the same thing on the back side. So I'm going to do the crisscross, this corner to this corner, this corner to this corner. Just need to pay attention that we're just marking the lower portion, and we're doing it lightly so we can erase this rather easily. Okay, now we're projecting up so we can find our midpoint, and there it is. There's our midpoint. Now, because these are aligned, meaning when you look at this illustration, that roof line it's sloped going up, but the ridge line itself is flat. Remember, all flat lines are projected at 45 degrees, especially if they're at 90 degrees to each other, or at least parallel to 90 degrees to each other. So, indeed, this part of the drawing lines up with that part. So, I've just drawn the ridge. Now I'm going to stop for a minute and fill in these lines so you can see them a little better, and I'll talk you through them just one more time. So, the first thing we did was we traced the outside of the floor plan, just the outside lines. Then we projected up 13 feet on each corner. Okay, so I'm going to draw those in so you can see those very well now. I'm not going to do the back one quite as heavy because I'm going to have to erase it. It's going to be a line that's going to disappear. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put in my baseline or my finished floor line also hard so you can see it a little better. I'm not going to do the back lines because they're going to disappear. I want you to see them, but I don't want to blast them on there so that they're hard to erase later and become confusing. Okay, so I think you can see the square. You can see each one of the four corners. Now, we added that block on top by adding that extra 12 feet, okay, because we were going to a total height of 25. That's just that overhead volume. Now we're going to erase that in a minute, but what we did was by finding that line across there, that gave us an elevation point to go and a position where the peak of this roof is, at not only the front, but also in the back. So we did that crisscross, that found us in the middle, we projected up, and that gave us that point. Now, for purposes of this exercise, that is just that subtractive process that was talked about in the lecture. We're now going to cut away most of that volume we put above that original box so that we can just show the roof line. So we know that there's a peak here, and we know there's a peak right here. So just like we did in that third assignment, we're just going to project a line from the corner down here up to here. I'm going to go from the other side to this point. Now, remember what I mentioned beforehand, distortion. Well, that's where it's starting to come in. We're not going to see it shown as a symmetric roof anymore. It's going to have a certain optical illusion that's going to change how that works and how it looks. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here on the back side. We're going to go from this corner up to the peak. And we'll put the back piece in also. Okay, so, and I'm going to, looks like I picked up some tape here. Put that down there for now. Okay, let me go ahead and get this back side edge in. There we go. All right, and we'll get this piece because that's an important edge. Okay, so I'm going to erase a few lines, but I think you can start to see where this form is is starting to take off and how we can see things just a little bit more clearly. I'm going to remove some of those guidelines I used overhead for finding that overhead roof structure. It's not necessary anymore, and it kind of confuses the view. The other thing I forgot to do, and I'll do just in a second, is to emphasize the roof line or the roof ridge there. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take care of some of this. Clean it up so that it's not so difficult to see. All right, so put in one last ridge line here. I think that'll help to complete the look of things here. Okay. All right, so there's the general form. That piece is as we work through the assignment, is the basic form. There is a couple other little things that we're going to do here. We're going to go ahead and put a base on it, but if it looks a little odd, it's not exactly symmetric, well, that's just what we're dealing with on this type of drawing. You're going to find some oddball effects and distortions that occur, but they're all part of how the plan obliques work. So don't get too hung up on that. All right, so we're going to do two more things here before we close this portion of the video. I need to make reasonable sections of video, so this will be completing our first piece, and that is that our building is not set. All we've done here is we've drawn this part of the building in form. We now have to put it on ground. We have to build the base. It's very simple. What we need to do is extend down from the finished floor 3 feet. So measure down from each corner 3 feet and put a mark. We don't have to do the backside because we don't see the backside. So let's just get this part done and we'll be okay. You could if you wanted to, but I'd keep it kind of light because we won't see it in the finished illustration. So we're going to project down to each of those points. And then we're going to connect them up. Okay, so now the thing is sitting on a base. That's the 3 foot of height that we had from the finished floor to the ground level. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Okay, so we're going to set that back up there, and then the basic form is now complete. I think it's not a bad idea as I stop this first section, this first segment of the demonstration videos, and move on to suggest that you clean up the lines a little bit. The crisscross line doesn't need to be there. The center lines don't need to be there, but you can see that there's a lot of lines that are distracting you from the basic form, and you can erase most of those so that they because they just don't have that much bearing moving forward. Even some of the back lines along here in the back corner, you can probably start to take some of those out. You can still find them in the future if you need them, but for right now, let's go ahead and remove those. Okay. All right, so we'll clean up this. We will be back in just a minute, and we'll continue on with the next segment of this demonstration. Thank you.